Hello and welcome to Public Conscience, the anti-corruption program produced by the Progressive Impact Organization for Community Development, PRIMOG. I am Chidozie Obonnaya with Estabas.
Thanks for joining us. Please watch us on our live stream on Facebook at Official PRIMOG. If it is convenient for you, the spelling of PRIMOG is PRIMORG.
On Public Conscience, we seek to evolve a corruption-free society by drawing government and citizens' attention to corruption reports and issues for prompt democratic actions against them. We also promote integrity by amplifying rare cases of the display of honesty by public and private individuals. We appreciate the MacArthur Foundation for supporting the production of this program.
The focus of today's program is the growing threat to press freedom and the civic space in Nigeria. The crackdown of journalists or on journalists by the state and non-state actors did not start today. But the recent hounding and harassment of journalists is an anticlimax to the growth of Nigeria's democracy.
I agree with you, Esther. According to an investigative report published by the International Center for Investigative Reporting, ICIR, press freedom is deliberately being eroded in the Nigerian society, as journalists are targeted through various ways, including laws like the Cyber Crime Act, unlawful or prolonged detention, and outright attacks by non-state actors. Recall media practitioners and civil society organizations recently protested the arrest and detention of 2 journalists by military and police authorities before they regained their freedom.
Section 22 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended, mandates the media to ensure the government's accountability to the people through reporting. However, no specific provision of the Constitution or any other laws passed by the Nigerian government protects journalists carrying out this responsibility. The Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, CGID, reported 74 attacks against journalists and the media workers in 2023.
And as Nigeria gets set for 2024 Democracy Day, which will be in weeks, the big question is whether it is not time to get journalists protected by law to play their role as watchdog of the government. How free are Nigerian journalists to perform their duties? How is the persecution of journalists impacting Nigeria's democracy and the fight against corruption? What must be done to protect the media industry in Nigeria, given their importance?
Be ready to join us through phone and text messages during this conversation. The WhatsApp phone line to send your message is 0902-265-6167. That is 0902-265-6167. Please indicate your name and your location when sending your message. This number is for messages only.
Please begin to send your messages as soon as possible to 09022656167. That is 09022656167. We will give out the numbers to call shortly.
Well, if you just joined us, the focus is on the reports on the increasing threat to press freedom and the civic space in Nigeria. The focus of today's program is the growing threat to press freedom and the civic space, perpetrated through the application of some section of the Cyber Crime Act, unlawful and prolonged detention, and outright attack by both state and non-state actors.
All right. And joining us to discuss attacks on journalists and the way forward is the National Secretary of Nigeria Union of Journalists, NUJ, Achike Chude. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. Let me also announce that we have investigative reporter with the International Center for Investigative Reporting, ICIR, Ijoma Opara, here with us in the studio. Ijoma, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And Fazia Mohammed Lukman, a reporter with Global TV, will also join via the phone later on. But let's start with the National Secretary of the NUJ, Achike Chude. Thank you for joining us to have this conversation this morning. Hello, Mr. Achike.
It's a pleasure.
All right. So let's go on. Let's start with your reaction to the rising cases of intimidation and harassment of journalists in Nigeria. How worried is the NUJ?
To worried. Naturally, we will be worried because it signals a greater danger to the society in the sense that the journalist is the mirror for the society. And the level of tolerance of the journalists and those who carry the news, especially about government and government actors, the level of threats that they attack in the discharge of doing their constitutionally mandated responsibility is an indicator of the level of intolerance within the polity, or the political space in the country. And it has often been said, and I think it's not generally acceptable, that if you want to determine the level of freeness, of democracy, the level of freedom, in a country, you look at the level of freedom of the press. That the level of the press determines the level of the democratization process in a country. And so it means, again, by that statement, again, if we accept it, that what it would mean is that if you are having increasing attacks on the media in Nigeria, then it means that the civic space is shrinking on a daily basis, and that becomes a threat to every other person. That becomes a threat for the citizens of the country, because it is only in an environment where you have free expression, of the people, especially articulated through the media, that you begin to talk about the progress, development, and then the level of the democratization process. But I guess, again, that what will be responsible for that is that, we are still in a quasi-democratic political dispensation in Nigeria. Yes, we have had about 25 years of unbroken democracy from 1999 to date. Mm-hmm. But the impression you have, and that is why you talked about the increase.
In initial statement, he said that free press is directly or related or correlated, is a direct sign of free working democracy. Ijoma, let me come to you before we get the guest back on track on the phone. Ijoma, you are an investigative reporter. You are out there every day. Let me even start with your perspective on the overview of the report you wrote. Why did it become necessary that ICIR had to go into this, writing this report?
Thank you very much, Chidozie. So, you see, press freedom has been a source of concern for quite a while, and every journalist, I like to think every journalist knows that our jobs is provided for in the Constitution, is backed by the Constitution, and so therefore we require that there should be some level of protection, right? Yes. And contrary to that, some laws have been enacted, which...
Let me hold you up there. Sorry, I will come back. We have Achikechu, the NUJ National Secretary, back on the line. Thank you so much for rejoining us.
Yeah, sorry, it's a network. Sorry about that. Yes. Well, if you look at, I think it's the whole conversation obviously is data-driven. Because when you make allusion to the fact that there is increasing threats on the media and journalists in general in Nigeria, it is based on the fact. If you look at what has happened from 1999, for instance, to date, you will see that there has been an upsurge, an increase in the attacks on journalists. And what makes it even much more worrisome is the fact that you can now talk about the liberalization of the attack on the media or the democratization of the attack on the media. And what I mean by that is that it used to be the forte, the responsibility of the government, the federal government itself, through federal agencies, for instance, to try to bring in their own perception any journalist that has erred to book through incarceration or whatever action they take against them, which in most cases, was wrong in the first place. But we now have a lot of other people coming into the fray, also doing the same thing. You now have state actors, at the state level, the subnational units, governors, articles being written against their excellencies, against certain, state actors. And then you see those state actors using the federal, might, also the police, to intimidate the journalists and to harass journalists. So it is no longer within the purview of the federal government or federal institutions to try to bring, in quote, the erring journalists to book. But now state governors, and we've seen it in the past how many years, in the country, we have seen journalists being picked up because they said something that a governor found displeasing.
We can call it an epidemic, so to say. And one want to ask the why question, because why are we having this rage, the increase, the numbers rising? The figure we have here is saying 74 attacks on journalists in year 2023. Why is this on the rise?
Yeah, well, I think again, I think it has to do with the fact that the political actors essentially do not understand the ideas and the ethos of democracy. The democracy, on which platform they came to power, and so there's always been this attempt or this tendency for them to mount the virtues, of democracy and all that. But when it comes to the practicality of it, they are found wanting in most cases. And so you find out that, we are coming from many years of military intervention in the politics of this, country. And so that military seat, that military mentality has never really left our politicians. So we obviously need to have a complete change, of orientation. They also need to understand that in a democracy, it is the people that determine. It is the people that are the most important. I'm not exactly sure that the political actors, especially elected public office holders, understand that power normally should lie with the people. And maybe one reason why we have to look at it this way is that when it comes to issues of election, not just in Nigeria, across the West African sub-region and parts of Africa, that it is the people themselves that should be determining the outcome of elections. But you have situations where the people do not. And so you have the political stakeholders take positions that ensure that they get elected into office using public institutions, security forces, and all that, and undermining the process. So, and that goes to the heart of why the people do not find themselves, the political actors do not find themselves beholding on the people. Because ultimately, the people are not exactly like 195%, the determinant factor in bringing the people to power.
All right,
so we need to have a situation where that narrative can change, where the people can be much more involved. And once the people are much more involved, there's a greater sense of awareness of the importance of the role of the people. And then I think the politicians will find themselves, behaving, much better to push our country forward.
All right, Echike, I hear you there. Awareness. Once they are aware, then we can begin to set things right. So let's look at what NUJ is doing to reduce attacks on journalists, and also, do you support the calls for a review of the Cybercrime Act, which is said to be unfavorable to the practice of journalism?
Yeah, well, I think the NUJ has committed itself over the years to the protection of free media, because the society, the progress of the society is dependent, on that. And coincidentally, we had the NUJ Press Award that held going to 2 weeks now, and there were government officials came to also those who were also honored and all that, to show the synergy between even the media and then those who govern. That it should not be that of hostility, permanent hostility. The media has a responsibility, and they made it very clear. In fact, the governor of Benue State, Alia, spoke so well, eloquently. He said that the only way members of the political class can truly be defense of the media is when they engage in pro-democracy activities, when they engage in those things that are beneficial to the people. Then they can expect a bit of leniency when it comes to the way the media articulates their activities in government. And the same thing with the Minister of Communication, who also spoke well and talked about the accountability, that it is the duty of the media, to hold government officials, they themselves, accountable. The same thing with the man who represented the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the same thing. So if you have this, the only thing I think a few of them complained about was the issue of fake media, which normally, everybody that involved in proper, robust, honest, sincere journalism should be, worried about. We want a media that is honest, that is transparent. So,
is there anything in the works to ensure that the fake guys are taken out of the media space?
Oh yes, we are currently currently we're always working not just at the national level, at the state levels. In fact, the various state councils of the NUJ from time to time update their database and try to weed out those ones that are bringing disrepute to the profession. Not just the fake journalists, but even genuine journalists who might not act in tandem with the principles and ethics of journalism. I think that there is this continuous process. But of course, that the society is made up of good and bad actors.
Absolutely. For want of time, before we let you go, just to find out if is NUJ rooting for any form of a change in our constitution to protect journalists better?
Yes, absolutely. But I don't know whether the protection that is being touted is that of making laws and all that to protect the journalists. I think there are already laws in the book, for instance, and the laws do not exonerate, journalists who impugn the character and integrity of innocent people.
Okay.
There are also laws for you to take such people to court, and that's why, some of these high-handed actions by the government, by government officials sometimes, we have always condemned because there are, instruments within our laws to deal with errant members of the NUJ who have impugned on people's character and integrity. So yes, we want more laws that can protect the journalists. But you also don't forget that the journalists are part of civil society. So I'm not sure that we are waiting for specific laws that says, look, the government must protect journalists. How are they going to do that? You have a country today that is under, threat, insecurity and all that. They have not been able to even protect the ordinary citizens of the country. Not to talk of making specific law only for the protection of the media and journalists. We want a country that works. We want a country that is secure. Because it's only in that kind of secured environment that the journalist himself can operate in a secured manner.
So much from the National Secretary, Nigerian Union of Journalists. Thank you so much for the perspective you brought into this conversation this morning, and enlightenment to the general public on what the media should be doing and what we are not getting. Thank you so much for making our time to join us.
Thank you. All right, and if you just join us, this is still Public Conscience, a production of the Progressive Impact Organization for Community Development. We just spoke to Achike Chude, NUJ National Secretary. NUJ stands for Nigeria Union of Journalists. And back in the studio, I still have Ijoma Opara, investigative reporter, International Center for Investigative Reporting. Thank you for staying with us.
Thank you, Jose.
All right, let's get back to our conversation. I had to hold you up there when Achike joined us. Please complete that thought on how we got here, how you got here, and investigating about raising concern about press freedom.
Yeah, so press freedom is nothing new with the media. I think it's been a long-standing concern. It's been something that has kept everyone worried. And I mean, there are different groups that have been involved in trying to stifle the media, not just state actors. Sometimes you see some of these actions coming from non-state actors. But based on the story, the reason for the story is, the Cyber Crimes Act of 2015, before it was amended, had been a cause of concern. People have been worried about the language of the law and all of that. And very recently, it was amended. And this amendment, though a very, very commendable effort, by the government to respond to concerns that people, journalists, civil actors have had about this law now, this act, the amendment is commendable, but there are still some ambiguities, with the language. There's still the concern that it can still be manipulated to crack down on journalists, stifle press freedom.
Share with us, please.
Yeah, okay, all right. So prior to the amendment, we had certain sections that were of concern, and I would like to focus on maybe section 24, subsection B, and that is, and I'm not quoting, that's the section that criminalizes publication of false information that might be targeted at annoying, insulting. There were words like, cause annoyance, insult, breakdown of law and all of that in the Constitution. And that was a very, as a journalist personally, that made me concerned. Do you mean that you can be arraigned by the state or you can be prosecuted by the state because you are insulting someone else. So where is the room for civil action? Where is the room for civil suits? If a person feels insulted by another person, there are processes under the law that you can go through rather than being picked up by the police, locked up, or the military, or whatever government security agencies might be used to enforce. So it was quite a cause of concern. It was a cause of concern for us. And then seeing that it's been amended and we still have some of these ambiguities, led to the report. Why should we still have these concerns when this law has been amended?
Is a kind of a grand norm that facts are sacred. So can facts be taken as insult in this context, in the context you're talking about?
The problem is that insults can be subjective. I like to use the example of saying something like maybe calling someone a fool in your local dialect or your local language, and in English, or a goat or something, or a minor insult that can be taken, or a clown. You can call a person a clown and you're just joking about it, but there's a way you can still say the same thing, maybe in a different dialect, and the person takes it more personally than he did. So I think insults are subjective, and so that is where who is to say what exactly might come across as an insult to you as a person.
So the interpretation can go either way.
Yes, it can.
All right, so let's look at what keeps you going. How much is the rising attacks on journalists affecting your enthusiasm to work? Is it encouraging you to do more, or is making you to just sit back and...
Are you deterred?
Well, no. I mean, saying it is encouraging is quite, no, it can't be encouraging. The fact that that anything you write can be used against you in some way or the other is quite discouraging. However, that doesn't mean that we have quite a resilient crop of journalists in Nigeria who still go for, because I mean that is the job. You see journalists who go ahead, take risks, reveal hidden truths and all of that, regardless of, and that is why we are calling for a better approach. I don't think any journalists feel that they are above the law. The law is the law, but there are ways that people can be. Yeah, there are processes, and rather than pick up a person and lock them up for days or weeks at a stretch, if you feel that someone has written something, you go to court. We have the courts for these issues, rather than just picking up and locking up people and then trying them under laws that are very ambiguous and can be manipulated to mean anything at any time.
I mean, it doesn't feel good working and knowing that somebody could attack you, or you can just be picked up arbitrarily, charged for any reason. I know even in some cases thrown into the cell of jail and the keys forgotten somewhere over some time. It doesn't feel good. But then it's part of our nation building. That's why we are talking about it. That's why we are looking at calling on government to do something to ensure that this part of dent on our democracy, we take it off. Media, journalists, we are the bastion of democracy, and we have a prominent role to play here, and that's why we are here to insist that the right things be done.
Absolutely.
Let's get involved our listener out there.
Okay, for you out there, please follow us on our social media platforms at Official Primorg. Primorg is spelled Primorg. And remember that we are still streaming live on Facebook at Official Primorg.
And remember that this program is interactive. The WhatsApp phone line to send your message is 090226167. 09022656167. This number is for messages only. Please begin to send your messages now to 09022656167. And we want you to join the conversation and have a say in what we are talking about. It concerns you. If our democracy is thriving, you will thrive. If journalists are stifled, they can't say much, you will also feel the impact. Is a whole lot of issue. It's ripple effect. The ripple effect can get to everybody. So we want you to have a say in this conversation. How possible is free press in our country? A very serious question. How free are Nigerian journalists to perform their duties? How is the crackdown on journalists impacting the fight against corruption and democracy? What must be done to protect the media industry in Nigeria.
We have a call already.
All right, let's see who is here. Hello, your name and where you're calling from.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? My name is Prince Bulus.
All right, I didn't get your name.
Bulus.
Okay.
Let's hear you.
My name is Prince Bulus Mamantari.
Great. Please, let's hear you.
Yes, I want to thank you for this great topic, and I honestly am very, very happy about the topic of discussion today. It's good. Journalism, the media, they have been trying. They have been doing a lot more and making the impact in Nigerian democracy of today. They have been speaking their voices and things have been getting right. But my fear is that some politicians, some of the good media have good voices that have been hearing in the media, the journalism. Some of them have been bought. That's the truth about it. Let's call it spade a spade.
You are saying
some of them have been bought the democratic dispensation. Some of them because of the love of money and others. Some of them are mingling into the affairs of politics in the dark note, and that's why a lot of things are getting in the wrong mode. But we need to retract. Let's start with that. Let's return back to where the media used to be. Changing the society, changing every set of life, so that we move forward.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Prince Bulus, for your contribution. We appreciate. Please, thank you for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So you can join us. Prince Bulus has just opened the phone lines for us to have this conversation.
Ijoma, would you like to react to what the caller said?
Well, I mean, I think that he might not exactly be wrong by saying, there are people who have gotten carried away by power, politics, money, and all of that.
Maybe Ijoma, you respond together. Let's hear who is here. Ijoma, please go ahead.
Yeah, like I was saying, I don't think he's wrong by saying there might be journalists who have been bought over, who are in the job for different other reasons rather than upholding accountability and democracy. Mm-hmm. But that is the case with every other sector. In this world, there will be bad eggs. And that was, I think, exactly what...
Yes, he said it.
Yeah. So I don't think that should be a justification for bullying the press, for intimidating the press, because at the end of the day, we all have to, say something when we see something. You really, really need to put these things. Like
he said, the society is made up of good and bad people.
Yeah, and the Energy Secretary already said earlier that there are plans to actually hold people, even within the media space, to account for whatever it is they publish.
And truly, if the law says if I publish something knowingly, I did it maliciously, then I should go in for it. Yes. If I'm going in for it, I should go in for it. It's just what is there. Okay, let's bring in another journalist into this conversation as we are being joined by Fozia Mohammed Lukman, reporter with Global TV. Fozia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we've been talking about press freedom and journalists being hounded and attacked in Nigeria. Give us your perspective on the increasing cases of journalist harassment in Nigeria, and why is press freedom dwindling by the day?
Okay, from my own perspective of the press dwindling, it goes both positively and negatively, because in some cases the press are being recognized, while in some cases the press recognition is not so encouraging, because I don't know, for some reason, those days when you call the press, people know that this is newsworthy, this is something that is going to grow global and call more attention and traction to whatever program or event or activities that is being holding at a particular time. Now, press releases helps a lot, but for some reasons, reporters, especially reporters with disability, have problem assessing those cases, because you will find out that when the reporters have one disability or the other, they have restriction to movement. And thereby they can't even go far the way normal reporters will do. And then sometimes the reporters help in all of that nature, in carrying other reporters along. But in some cases, most times it's always fit for yourself, it's one man war, like you just have to like help yourself or you are left behind.
So inclusivity is an issue here from your perspective.
Sorry?
So the environment, the operating environment is very tough for persons with disability.
Yes, at the moment it's quite tough for persons with disabilities because unless you are working in a very high recognized media station, your chances of getting invites, participating in places is very, very little. And then when you get there, the recognition is like, for example, you're talking to a deaf reporter who has to do a report. Instead of talking to the reporter herself, you talk to her interpreter. Or maybe when the reporter has physical disabilities, you get to a place where it's like less accessible. And then when the reporter requests that you come to a place that is more accessible to him or her, you feel, no, the reporter is asking too much and all of that. So in some cases, it's quite intimidating for some reporters.
Okay, so as a journalist, aside from limited recognition that persons or journalists that are PWDs get to face, have you experienced any form of harassment or intimidation doing your job as a journalist?
Well, like I said earlier, it's a thing of a friendly war. I mean, all is saying love and war. Now, as a reporter, sometimes you would get, as a journalist, you would get recognized and sometimes you wouldn't. Now, in the cases where you weren't recognized, comes the harassment. Now, unless you stand your ground and explain and then be like, it's my right, like, and all of that, sometimes most of them don't even know that that right exists in the first place. So they attack you based on their perception that you weren't invited or like supreme power and all of that. Without realizing that you as a journalist, you're not just a person with disability that is a reporter, but a journalist as a reporter, there's power in the pen itself. So personally, I've had an occasion where I went for to cover an event, and then I was really told I wasn't invited. So I was like, it's cool that I'm not invited. I'm not even here for anything but for my own personal good as a journalist. I want to cover this place, and they were like, no, we didn't invite you. You have to go. I stood my ground that no, I want to be here. I need to be here. I have every right to be here. Now, if you don't let me sit here, I'll write a bad review about you. And it really did help.
And you were allowed to cover the event?
Of course, I was allowed to go. After all, I come back empty-handed.
Yeah, I commend your courage. And journalists, one of the qualities of a good journalist is being courageous. And it's good that you stood your ground. And I just wish that this will be an encouragement to a lot of journalists out there who are in despair, who are afraid of what the public may give them out there. But what would you like to see changed in the way journalists are being treated and attacked out there?
Okay, for me, like first and foremost, I feel the government should be involved. Yes, there's Disability Act, and a lot of people are not even aware. But I feel if the government should lay more emphasis on the fact that there are journalists who have disability. Journalism is not like restricted to only people that they perceive as normal. Even with disability, you have the right to do anything you want, so long as you focus your mind to it and you have the mindset to like just go out and get it without limiting yourself. So the government should come and help individuals who have worked, because it's not easy getting the courage to come out, knowing fully well that you're going to face belittling, rejection, non-recognition, and all of those things, and you still wish to come out and do the job. I feel the government, the parastatals, the NDAs, the other reporters should also give you a helping hand, because at the end of the day, everybody had a helping hand. If none of us were to be helped, none of us would have gotten to where we are today. Some of us had nothing or no knowledge and all of that, but because someone somewhere helped you in becoming who you are, we can all come together and help each other. We shouldn't rely on just the government. Though the government plays a very big role, a pivotal role, but we as individuals, we as other journalists need to help each other in going. And then stations and people giving out invites and calling on journalists should also recognize that there are people with disabilities in journalism, and also extend invites to them and give them
absolutely brilliant from Fozia Mohammed Lukman. I mean, you couldn't have nothing to add to what you have said. It's just the way it should be. The government should encourage persons with disabilities who are journalists to, do their work better. Thank you so much for joining us with your own version, your own perspective of press freedom and what we should be looking for. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, let me quickly take this call before I get back to my guest in the studio. Your name is
Morning.
From?
Sorry very much to disturb. It's Bulu's mom and Tani coming back again.
Okay, Bulu's in 30 seconds, please.
Yes, I don't want to. In fact, I will be the first person to fight against anybody fighting journalists. In fact, in Nigeria, we have to come together as one family. Even if you are not a journalist, anybody touching a journalist anywhere, for that journalist, it should not be touched. These people are there to help us. They should not be touched.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yes, they should not be touched. Killing journalists is, in fact, is the one thing that I can fight with my entire life. Nobody should hurt a journalist. A journalist, they are there to give us good information. If we need to go, what we need to do and what we need to do. Journalists are the ones at the forefront. So they should not be touched. Nobody. Government should stand. And a lot of governors, this immunity, word and word, you see governor, journalists are being harassed in the state and nobody said anything about it. Governor cannot stand and say, no, don't touch it.
All right. Thank you so much, Prince Bulus, for coming back. It's like you had a rating out there. Thank you so much for joining us. All right. Ijoma, I must thank you so much for your patience. But let me have you join this conversation. A lot has been said from one guest to the other. At this point, just tell us what you want to see done about the Cyber Crime Act.
Okay. Earlier I mentioned that there were lots of ambiguous parts of the act, even after it has been amended. I think that we can start by look. The language of the law is quite important in some of these things. So I think that we need to consider the language a bit more. We need to look into things like I mentioned. Okay, if you say someone published something that led to a breakdown of law and order, what do you mean? What do you exactly mean by that? Does this mean that if you report something that actually did happen and then there's a breakdown of law and order, I should be tried for that? I mean, it's not the journalist's fault that there can be really atrocious cases, out there. And while the journalist has the responsibility to report whatever you've seen or witnessed, bearing in mind public good, you have to put out your report in such a way that at the end of the day, what you stand to achieve is public good. But you also have a responsibility to tell the truth.
Yes.
Yes. So I think that we need to also look at these laws. We need to also look at the language, the ambiguity. I think there's also a part of the law. Now I think section 38 or 39, and I can't be too sure, but it's one of those two that spoke about retrieving traffic data from service providers. Do you need to get a police warrant to get this data? If, for instance, you want to go through my calls as a security agent, a security operative, wouldn't you need to get maybe a warrant or something? But I don't think it's mentioned in the law. Things like this what I feel should be addressed.
Like you said, laws are always come with lacunas. So, and that's why at some point there's need for review, revisit, and you cross the I's and dot the T's again. So feel free to call us.
Let's get to Ijoma. Right, we've had several cases. The ones I don't know if you've had any experience of harassment of any sort, intimidation as a journalist trying to carry out your job.
Oh yes, intimidation, harassment. There have been several elections in recent times, and election periods are usually quite hot for everyone, including journalists. So yeah, the only time I had the personal confrontation like that because of was in Abuja here, I think 2022, when we had our FCT elections. I had such I was trying to capture some anomalies at the polling unit, and I was harassed. It didn't generate to anything that bad, thankfully, but I had to leave the polling unit because of my own safety.
Yes,
I mattered too. Right, yeah.
So apart from the field, is the Constitution structured in a way to protect, the media space when it comes to online and the rest?
Esther, that's a little bit too much for me as a journalist, but I understand where you're going to. I think that I don't, like Mr. Chude said, I don't expect that there should be maybe a law for just journalists, or maybe, how far can we go in protecting individuals? But I feel like if the Constitution has said the press must be free at all times, that is what Section 22 said. The press must be free at all times, to uphold accountability, to hold the government account. I think that there should be something to also punish whoever tries to stifle that freedom. That is how I see it. So there should be something that follows, like, okay, failure to allow journalists to do this work can be punishable by whatever this or that or whatever. So I think that might also be a way to balance that responsibility that the Constitution handed over to journalists. For me, it just feels like the Constitution said, go out there and report. And then when I go out there and report and get into trouble, I'm on my own. Yeah.
You can get social with us. Get to our Facebook page at Official Prime Org. That is where we are streaming live. You can drop a message there and we will read your message out. We are still talking about free press freedom, the challenges, the crackdown on journalists. I don't know how to put it, but recently we celebrated we marked the World Press Freedom Day, and government gave the assurances of backing free press in Nigeria, and not quite long after that we had journalists arrested, kept away before it had to come to upright people protesting before we got them out. How committed do you see the government to what they say and what is going on?
I think that a lot more can be done. Again, I know earlier I said it was commendable that our Cyber Crimes Act was amended. That was a commendable move, But in this year alone and under this administration, there have been repeated cases of people. There was the case of Mr. Segun Olatunji, who recently was abducted from his home for weeks. People couldn't even tell where exactly he was. And there's been nothing said to condemn that. It seems as though, things are just happening. And for a government that, expressly promised to uphold a free press, I don't think that this body language is enough, So I think more can be done. We had a journalist be locked up here for 10 days. And it wasn't arrested. It wasn't a case where you go to a person's house, issue an arrest warrant. You just abduct people like that because, no. So I think more can be done. There has to be outright condemnation, of these acts. People need to be brought to book. When Segun Olatunji was arrested, the NUJ and the media community called for the punishment of officials that were involved in his abduction, because that is what it was.
Were they punished?
I've not heard anything like that till now, and there were repeated calls for punishment. So if we have security officials and those in the corridors of power keep on behaving this way, and everyone continues to get away with it, so how then how did this government plan to actually uphold a free press?
The government should look in the mirrors and match their words with actions.
Absolutely.
Your last word as we wrap up, we are out of time.
Yeah, I think that freedom of the press is the freedom of every member of society, and I think that both those in the corridors of power and those regular Nigerians like ourselves, should actually be actively involved in calling for a free press. I think we should go beyond just calling. People need to actually put in the action to ensure that our press is free, because at the end of the day, it's for the good of everyone.
By action, you mean what?
Both those in the corridors of power.
Protests or what? What do you mean by action?
Yeah, I think it goes
from
beyond
citizens.
From citizens, yes, calling for these reviews of laws. Civil society organizations have been up and doing, in that aspect. We need people to add their voice to these calls, and we need those in government. So actually, okay, so what do we do? It's not always by saying, we are supporting a free press, we are upholding. Act on it. All right.
Leaders lead the way, so they should lead the way. Free press cannot be overemphasized. It's a very fine place to drop the anchor on today's program.
Of course, there's please visit us. Please visit our news website, primognews.org. That is primognews.org. For all the details of our reports and interviews, visit our website, www.primog.org, to get all the information about Primog.
And you can watch our videos on Primog TV, our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to get reminders when we have a new post. We appreciate our guests, Ijoma Opera, who is an investigative reporter with the International Center for Investigative Reporting. Ijoma, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Tuesday.
All right, many thanks to the National Secretary of Nigeria Union of Journalists, NUJ, Achike Achude, who joined us via the phone, and also Fazia Mohammed Lukman, a person with disability, a reporter with Global TV, who also joined via the phone. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Public Conscience has the support of the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. Get more information about the foundation on its website, macfound.org.
Join us again here next week for another episode of Public Conscience. And remember to follow us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, at Official Primog. I am Esther Bassi.
Remember that birth registration and birth certificates are free if your child is under 18. Help stop the corruption in birth registration and do not pay for birth certificate. Also remember that you can give us information or hints about corrupt acts through our phone at 090-2265-6167 or info@primog.org. I am Chidozie Ogbonnaya. God bless you.